Hello, my name is Hamlet Dobbins, and this is Memphis Material, an oral history project chronicling the stories of the visual arts in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis Material is a podcast celebrating the personal histories, the intimate stories, and the studio practices of some of the people who help shape the creative landscape of our city. These unedited interviews are all recorded at the Memphis Listening Lab, an archival gem located in the majestic Crosstown Concourse in the beautiful Midtown Memphis. Now, the archive for Memphis Material and the website are designed by the wonderful Brian Dixon. We don't have sponsors for this project, but if we did, today's episode, the first of two interviews recorded with Lester Julian Merriweather, would be sponsored by Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Lego. You'll see why shortly. Now, this interview was recorded on March 16th, 2024. The project was still sort of in its embryonic stage. I still totally did not know what it was going to do. And so in the spirit of that, and also in the spirit of it being an unedited interview, Lester and I talk at the very beginning about this project and how it might work. So enjoy the interview.
And are these edited at all? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I have no idea what these are going to be. And so, right. But that said, what I'm going to do when we get done here today is I'll throw it into a file and then I'll send it to you.
Whole?
Whole, yeah.
Okay.
And then if anything is in there and you're like, oh, yeah, no way, Hamlet, I totally.
Yeah, I wanted to at least be able to.
I don't know why
I
don't
that. Think that's, you know what, no. I personally know that I'm not going to say anything that I wouldn't repeat.
Okay.
So that's why this is an interesting format. I did want it to be like, yeah, no, don't edit anything out.
Okay. Well, I mean, because part of what I'm thinking with this is that I'm not particularly interested in being funny or interesting or boiling it down to like a 20-minute piece or anything like that. I just wanted to have a full, as much as I can, a full record. And then for a lot of people, we totally get done in 2 hours. We're totally fine. And then other people, we get up to about high school in 2 hours. And so don't feel like you have to rush. Don't feel like we're in any crunch for time or anything like that. And then, like I said, I'll send it to you. But again, I have no idea where it's going to live. I don't know if it's a thing that just is like a archive of files, or if it's a website or a podcast, or if I send it to Arts Memphis and they keep it on their website. I have no idea. I don't know anything.
Disappear.
But right now, it's just something that I'm just kind of doing because I feel like it's something that I need to do, and I feel like it's something that would be good for it to be done. I like some of the oral histories that people have done in the past, or some of the things that people have done in the past, but they seem real edited down. And then also kind of with that idea of being entertaining. And really all I want to do is sit down with people that I admire and want to hear their stories and get that sense of what it was that made them who they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. All right.
You say admire. What exactly? Like when I'm included, what do you admire?
What do I admire about you?
Yeah. I'm just curious. I mean,
well, Lester, you're
2 hours to fill.
You're a kick-ass artist. You're a really great maker.
I'm cool, man. I try a lot of stuff. So.
And I think you've got a really good story. Well, from what I hear of your story,
it's a lot of stuff you don't know.
It seems like it would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so thinking about that, one of the things I'm curious about, and I usually start with, is what's your earliest memory of art as a kid?
I mean, just the actual fact that I was drawing before anything, to the point where when I started writing, it was literally the same thing. I would take forever in elementary school. Now, this is not a memory from then, but looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I just used to have to draw my letters so that they're perfect, you know? not like, you know, not just common writing and understanding writing, but it was like, okay, this is something visual and I care about it. So that's, if you want to be technical about it, that's the earliest. But I just really used to love to draw. And it was the type of thing that would bring peace. Like, you know, early on you're in church and it's like, you want to shut them up, give them a program and a pen, and you'll be sitting there drawing the whole time.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, just out of curiosity, what kind of things were you drawing? Do you remember what kind of things you were drawing?
I mean, of course, as a kid, you know, it's always shoes, it's people, stuff, cars. I mean, I guess that's a reflection of my own like personal urban experiences. Those were the things that were like worth drawing. So, yeah.
And then, how did you know how to do that stuff? Like, was that something that you had really were drawn to in school? Was that something that you did around the house, and other people were involved in it?
Yeah, no, I did it everywhere. It was that was the escape. Was for me personally, it was drawing. So it was just that natural. It wasn't like, oh my God, let me do this thing for this person or any of, you know, any assignment. It was just, I just really loved to draw.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then would you carry around like a little sketchbook? Was it one of those things that like you would, I mean, I know like when I was a kid, I would get like sketchbooks and colored pencils and stuff like that for Christmas. Was that something that was encouraged in the house?
I think more than anything, just a sense of creative freedom was not necessarily encouraged, but I was like, I'm the youngest of three and we're literally 7 years apart each. So each of us was something like an only child. So my own, you know, 7 years younger than my sister deal was that I'm in the house, I'm playing with Legos. So to make a more specific sense of age, you know, it's Star Wars, it's Lego, it's G.I. Joe, and, you know, that's like an era when I'm just as young and free as possible, still being creative. And I'm also, you know, the child of two teachers, so it's like there's a sense of structure that was just inherent in, you know, being creative. So.
Now, when you were talking about being a child of two teachers, what are some other ways that influenced the art as a kid?
They understood education as a thing that created structure in a, you know, a different way that, you know, someone who's not as involved with the regularity of the educational system. Of course, here in town, it's Memphis City Schools, and a lot of times people end up saying that the teachers back then cared more, and as such, they went to greater lengths to make sure that you were getting what you were supposed to be getting out of your time at school. And so for two teachers who understood that structure the whole time, they understood the importance of like, yeah, you need to be, you know, you should be reading in this time. You should be learning to write. You should be learning these other structural things, but you also need time to abandon that stuff and just think for yourself. So I think my parents, both being science teachers, they understood that a lot better than most. And so it was just an environmental thing, you know.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Whitehaven area, of course, Memphis, Tennessee.
And is that where your parents also taught?
They taught at a few different schools. The ones that they spent the most time, my father, Chickasaw Junior High at the time, for, you know, they both taught 35 plus. My dad taught almost 40. So they went through a lot of different times and a lot of sets of really different types of students. So they understood like how to make adjustments for different times. until it was just time for them to decide not to. So the vast majority of the time in Memphis was Chickasaw Junior High for my dad and Dunn Elementary for my mother.
Okay. Now, what about you? Where were you?
Let's see, I went to Doubletree for elementary, John P. Freeman for junior high. It's weird because everybody's middle school now, so but Central High School for that process, and then Jackson State, and then Memphis College of Art because education. Leaving Central, I didn't really have specific plans, but the last part of Central, the last 2 years of Central, were the first time I had formal educational, educational settings. So those went directly into going to Jackson State instead of University of Memphis and one other. Later on, I found out it could have been SCAD, but that's another story. Mm-hmm. So
now, when you were talking about things that you were looking at when you were a kid, you were talking about G.I. Joes and Star Wars. Were you also looking at comic books? Were you looking at album covers? Was there other visual information?
So my older brother, like I said, we're 7 years apart. So he was 14 years older than me. So wow. He had record collections, of course. Some of those covers were interesting. If you can imagine Alligator Woman cover being a really fascinating cover. Rick James is the one where he's like Conan and like all stacked up. A couple of Isaac Hayes records, things like that. But yeah, he was also into comic books. So I think one of the most interesting ones he has now that kind of parallels, he had the whole Secret Wars grouping. So he was more so into comic books. By the time I actually got into comic books, I think the few I picked up were like G.I. Joe and some other things. But he was all the way into Marvel. Like, of course, like, that type of collector. And for me, if he had those comic books, all I was looking for was trying to find the Star Wars coupon in the back to try to get a dollar Obi-Wan or something.
Now, what was it? I mean, Star Wars is also a common part of my story too, and so I'm curious, what was it about that story that felt like it spoke to you?
Of course, like, born, exactly when I was born. I of course, growing up, looking at the same cartoons and eventually seeing those same, if you YouTube Star Wars commercials, you're realizing I saw those things in real time, or like just hilariously remembering, from G.I. Joe, they were always like after this special thing, and it was literally a corn pop. If you look back at those commercials, like the special nugget or the radioactive whatever, it was a literal corn pop. So, but going back to the Star Wars commercials, it's that whole thread that you're looking at and not even understanding. Now you see the documentaries of how those Kenner toys ended up being Hasbro, all these different, things. It's like I would see, I came into it probably toy-wise very interested in the Return of the Jedi grouping. And of course, because, let me go back into it. My dad worked at Sears. So I literally had access to all of everything, like all the time. So I was literally like, hey, Pop, you want to bring me something? And it's like, oh, here's a Gamorrean guard and a Imperial, and here you go. And so of course I was like collecting all along. That was just my favorite thing, along with some Lego sets. So, it was always just like, he's working at Sears, just bring me something. just bring something. And it was always the coolest, like all of it. So,
well, for me, like 2024 Hamlet, looking back at that, it makes me think about how a large part of your process now is the gathering of these images and the gathering of these things and sort of having this like stockpile or a kind of like a reserve of these images.
That's definitely a part of it.
Were there other ways that was present there as a kid? Were you also collecting things as a kid?
Toys and Legos. That was the extent of it. But back to Star Wars. We're not done with that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm starting to understand at the time. It's like the effect of Star Wars is that Empire Strikes Back was the very first movie I ever saw as a kid where the good guys lost. And it was the type of thing that was so damn fascinating. Like, we really just got our asses kicked. And and everything just went to shit like all at once. And it was literally the first time I had seen that and experienced it. Um, Not counting, like, I don't like Bambi's what it is, all of those types of things. I didn't care about none of that. It was this moment where I realized at the end of that movie we lost, and we lost big. What is gonna happen? And afterwards, it's like, of course, the next movie comes out and the toys and all of that. So then it's like, yeah, this has opened up the ideas about a whole nother concept, because it's about loss, and it's about that at, I guess that's 5 or 6 years old. And I'm just sitting here with that, understanding that those are two very different sides of those emotions. Those are just, different ideas that can be explored. So I think going through, being an artist and whatnot, it's the set of perspectives that, like you said, in collecting, I find all of this material, and it has weight, in its own different way. So yeah, yeah.
And then also, just like an aside, if at any point you're like, oh, I totally forgot about this, you can totally jump back. Don't feel like you have to be like, okay, we're gonna stick to the timeline. Okay, so now, just out of curiosity, like for me, I remember that same thing with Empire, and I remember like at the end there was this moment where they sort of they pulled back, from the ship, and it's like the gang is all there, and they're kind of hanging out except for Han Solo, and they're all kind of hanging out. And I just remember like the total sense of disbelief. Like I couldn't believe that that anybody would do that. And then the other part of me remembers like the total uncertainty of that time. Like for me, we lived in Millington, and I remember at a way too early age, my dad told me about how like hiding under a desk is not going to save us from an atomic bomb. And like I just remember like thinking to myself, oh my God, I hope we don't have like a nuclear holocaust between now and when Jedi comes out. I was just like, it's okay if it happens after Jedi.
This, right.
And so there was this like for me, it was like this dovetailing of societal anxiety mixed with the anxiety of, I don't know, an 11-year-old or however old I was at 81 or whenever that was. And then the total shift between like what was happening in the world during Empire, and then all of that like Ronald Reagan feel-good shit that happened with the Ewoks, at the end, and everything was totally going to be okay, and there was the ghost of the dead dad. And so like all of that stuff happens too. But for me, one of the things too that I'm super curious about you is you were talking about real early the idea of creating a kind of safety. And then for me, the toys were also a way to, build that bridge between the smallness of myself and the largeness of this great story. I'm wondering, and then the other thing that I think is really great about these interviews is that, most of the people that I'm talking with, we're all really reflective people, and we've really kind of given it a lot of thought. And so, like, just out of curiosity,
the fact that we live with it the whole time,
right?
Forces us.
I know it's like constant, but I'm curious. What do you think? Like, what do you think it was? And then, of course, what do you think that means for 2024, Lester, in terms of thinking about your practice now and a kind of safety that happens with the art?
I think nothing changes about the process itself. Like the fact that you have to um, make work, that's what legitimizes you as an artist. Making work, taking risks, um, continuing whether those risks pay off or not. I mean, 24 isn't gonna change the fact that I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go to the studio every day. Now, if something in 24 changes that for me, then I'm gonna adjust. I'm gonna adapt and figure out like how exactly can I continue to, have a studio practice. Um, that's why it's kind of hard to, when you think about it, especially I guess when you say 24, it's mostly, um, it's at least tethered in some way to the political nature of 24. But if you look at the arts community, even before, um, what is it, the NEA, before they literally just almost shut down for individual artists, there was a time that existed before that, and there's now. And so, it never stops the ones of us who are serious about being in the studio. It never stops us from going and figuring out how to be in the studio. Whether there are, sometimes that you can't physically be there. I think a lot of us also, whether we talk about it or not, we have things that happen personally, health wise, family wise, that change the dynamic of what we can do and where we can be at different times. But like I said, it for the most part, we do what we can as artists to not allow that to stop the process of making art in whatever form it has to take.
Now, do you think that kind of like that kind of drive was present at a really early age, like in terms of thinking about your need for that kind of creative space, to carve that space out for yourself? And if so, I wonder what it looked like for you. Like for me, it was sitting in front of the television, with like Saturday morning wrestling going, and me rummaging around through the Legos. And it was a time where I could kind of be by myself and kind of be quiet, and make weird noises and build these ships and kind of zoom them around and then kind of break them apart and then kind of hop back into the wrestling depending on what was going on. And so it was a kind of a time where I was able to build stuff with my hands, and there was this like real kind of kinesthetic pleasure that would come from building these things and then seeing them done and then also breaking them apart and trying to make them better next time. And so I'm wondering, like, what was it? What do you think it looked like for you?
I mean, it's close in nature. I can almost like draw a parallel for a different time in my life when, you reflect on those Legos. I did that same thing, and my parents had, unfortunately for them, they had a shag carpet at the time. So once I get like as far out with Legos as humanly possible, I'm starting to also realize, oh yeah, that little hand that's shaped like a disaster to step on is somewhere over there, and I don't know exactly where it is until somebody steps on it.
Right.
But that same energy is like I was working on houses for a while, and because I did that Lego stuff, it was almost seamless to say, okay, we can build this in this way. We can utilize these construction materials, because my dad, like I said, he was working at Sears, and it's almost like he was of Sears, because it's like every power tool that he loved came home. So I always had practice with drills, saws, mitering, making like edge molding, like all of that stuff is just inherent because it's stuff he did.
Okay.
So you go into a whole different structure, and it comes easy. The visual nature of all of that stuff becomes like, oh, I can be a foreman on this construction crew because I understand, okay, let's get these paints for this thing. It needs to look this way. It needs to have these colors. Let's get this type of crown molding, or let's get to where we can make it. All of those instead of getting the molding and paying all of that, we got this raw wood. Let's buy the bit and let's go into it in those methodical ways. So the simple act of sitting on the floor, working through all of these Legos and knowing that the worst threat is your mom is like, don't have me stepping on a one piece or a hand. And we can be okay. So at the end of the day, that construction site of Legos gets cleaned up. Even though it's got as wily as the entire den, it's like at the end of the day, this has to be organized in this way. Those things for me in my practice, they spill over because it's like, okay, I need some chaos, but I need a certain level of the lines I need to draw to make the thing work out for my own personal process, for it to be joyous, for it to be freeing, and to give me creative energy. It also has to be this way for me in my studio. So,
now you were talking about your dad building. What kind of things was he building?
The very last thing he was working on was a bookcase, and I ended up having to go through the process of finishing that thing. But it was he made all types of stuff. He made furniture. He made started out with small things like this. How can I build this cabinet? And of course, because we were literally at Home Depot or Lowe's every free moment, you get your Craftsman tools from Sears, but then you get a Lowe's account and you pick up the stuff you need in between. And, whatever came to mind, we built the cabinets that are at the original home house now, computer desks. Like I said, the last thing he was working on was a bookcase. I think the largest thing we did, the complete enclosure on the back side of the house. We figured out how to make a porch stand patio. So we weren't messing around. He was in the backyard and pouring concrete for different. He wanted to know how to do all of this stuff, and he took his retirement very much in that way. So. Yeah.
And it sounds like it sounds like you were sort of always around a maker in that way. What about your mom? I know you said she was a science teacher. Was she also creative in that way?
She had the capacity to be. She could paint. She could, if they were painting a room somewhere, it wasn't just him doing it. But she also just spent a lot of time making sure we were, her three very different age, young people were in the places they need to be, which was always a very, very, one's in college, one's becoming, a middle school person, and one's over here on the floor.
Right.
Playing with some Legos. I'm good.
Now, you were talking about how basically each of the kids kind of grew up as an only child. Did you have friends that you would hang out with and make art with? Was it one of those things where it was kind of
not make art? I had people who, I guess everybody else would be like, they led normal lives, but right. It's they work in office jobs now or are entrepreneurs, but they are not. Being an artist is a whole different deal that takes a whole lot of other moving parts that someone who ended up, I'm a business major and I got this job at this place, and we were all very different types of people. So that the creative nature of it was growing up. Like I said, until 11th grade, I never took a single art class, and so the only handful of things in Memphis growing up in, I guess it was Memphis City Schools at the time. We were fortunate to have the Ramses exhibits and those wonders and whatnot as a part of our field trips. And we went to the Brooks a few times. And I think that's literally the only exposure I had to anything close to what art was.
No, I'm curious. I missed out on that Ramses thing. Mm-hmm. What was it about that struck you?
The scale. More than anything, it was the scale. I didn't fully grasp the importance of having that type of series, the Wonder series, having the idea that you would introduce something else to a space like Memphis, and you had all of a sudden you had the pyramid, you still had use of the Coliseum in a way that was sufficient. And so those are the things that make you look back and understand, like, at least Memphis was trying to do something. You know, some things are problematic, some things are not. Like leaving a whole structure like the pyramid and just abandoning it for that time because you had other options. Those are the type of things that, in the larger sense, kill some of the continuity of a place like Memphis. Mm-hmm. Just deciding the Coliseum, yeah, well, whatever.
Right.
That's that's weird. When you got other cities who really decide, yeah, we're not going to leave a dead hole in the middle of the city just because. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not a just because. I'm sure it's a reason for whoever controls that side of the financial aspect of it. But
now, what about the Brooks? What do you remember about the Brooks when you were a kid?
All field trips were the same, man. Like, you just want to get the hell out of the space, man. It didn't really matter where you were going. I mean, shit, the zoo was the same. You like, most of us brought a lunch, which consisted of a soft drink wrapped in aluminum foil. Like, it's a very natural. Like,
the world's greatest
space.
Insulator.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Absolutely. Saw that on a meme like 2-3 weeks ago. Yeah, no, it wasn't. I wouldn't call it any different from any of the others for me personally. I think it was like the only exposure that anybody else ever got. But because I was already like in the sense of I love to draw, and here I am in a place where all they have is art. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I remember that field trip probably about 3 or 4 times over the course of K through 12. Mm-hmm.
Now, you were saying you ended up taking art classes at Central. Now, mm-hmm. Were you a part of that Bill Hicks legacy?
Bill Hicks hates me, man.
Well, I mean, the good
Make
news
sure you
is,
record that. Bill
the
Hicks
news is I'm sure Bill's probably
ass.
not going to be listening to this.
Hey, I might send it to him. So here's the.
But wait, why would he hate you?
He does. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I was intentionally a class clown. Mm. There's myself. I'm not gonna name the others, but they are actually still artists here in the community. But yeah, it was myself and 2 others, and we were just like, yeah, we're in Memphis. We're sitting in this class, and we're gonna check each other. That's just a natural part of the class. I'm sorry, it's 16 people in there.
Now wait, when did you graduate?
When did I graduate? 96. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, it's myself and.
Wait, you graduated from high school in 96?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. All right.
You thought we would
further apart in age? No, I thought we were a little closer in age because I graduated in 88.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because then you used the word check.
In Frank's era.
Which made me think, okay, hang on. Let's just talk about checking. Okay, so.
No, checking been around since when I was in elementary.
I know. When I was in high school.
You should have been
no, but
familiar.
Now, who else was in this class?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you. It was Matthew Thomas and Anthony Lee.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, we were the 3. And so here's the thing. I say Bill Hicks doesn't like me or whatever, but it's more so like I was an absolute menace in that class, and it was just because that was the nature of high school at the time. But he was like in 11th grade, he was like, "Yo, we need to go ahead and put you up with the AP students." It was almost reluctantly. It's like, oh, he is actually drawing well enough to. But the thing about AP, so the other Bainan was in that class too.
Who was it?
Bainan Ford.
Oh.
But Bainan wasn't a class clown. Bainan was one of them. He was absolutely serious in class. I put it like that, in class. But yeah, it was. You probably know Mark Young as well. Mm-hmm. He was in one of those classes.
Maybe. My brain is not what it was.
And like Graham, I think his name was Graham Sweeney. But it was a small group of kids who like were just relatively naturally talented and could draw. So he put us in the AP classes, and that was a place where, I mean, there was a separation because, of course, as a teacher, he had his favorites. He had students that were absolutely more serious, people like Bainan. I think Derek Forger actually was maybe a year and a half before me in that class, like semester wise, but I never met him back then. He was just legendary as being one of the more serious students. So, Bill Hicks would like him. He would like Bainan. He would like Mark Young. Myself, I was just like, yeah, you here too. But it was cool because that was the introduction to one thing. It was scholastic. So that was the type of thing that taught me, you need to understand how to apply to, certain things, how to put together whatever you call a resume at a certain point, all of those things. So he was definitely a great teacher in teaching things you really did need to know as a practicing and professional artist. One of those things specifically was making slides. He had us making slides in 12th grade. I know, right? It ages you fast. He had us making slides in 12th grade, so I understood, how that part of the process worked. When I went to Jackson State University, their department to this day not now because they've gotten some of the funding that they deserved along the way, but at the time they didn't have any art scholarships. But here I am, one of the only students that comes in fall '96 with a set of slides to this process, and it's like they were kind of taken aback. They were like, "Oh, okay, well we need to figure something out. So let's go talk to the honors college, and you have the grades. You got the ACT. Which one is the up to 30? Which ACT or SAT? It's one of them. Yeah. But the one that was up to the lower set of numbers, it was I just had everything that they needed to give me an honors college scholarship, as opposed to just trying to be there and just paying for it. So that was one fortunate thing too. I was able to leave college and grad school with like literally no debt. So that was a huge difference. And that's an entirely different story. Like fast forward into MCA's experience, but yeah.
But now, just out of curiosity, and so you were saying when you went to Jackson State, you went there with good grades. You're talking about being a class clown at Central, but you were still making really good grades.
I never. I'm the son of two teachers.
Right. I was about to say
that's one thing that's like they understand that the world is yours. The class clown part comes in because I'm done with my work. It's right. I'm finna sit over here and draw, and all this time I'm drawing 40% of the time, and other people are working. I'm like, I'm finna fuck around.
Now I'm curious, like I was asking before, like what were some things that you were drawing when you were a kid, but I'm also super curious about some things that, like if we had that sketchbook from '96, like I'm curious what kind of things would we find in there? What kind of things were you looking at or thinking about?
In '96, so going into college,
or even in
there was
class.
A continuation, of course. Like when you're in Mr. Hicks' class, the one thing that we did the most was, of course, still lives. You work on a still. He was the type of teacher. It was good to have him as a teacher in that way because you start to understand like most of these early drawing classes end up being like, okay, you guys quote unquote know how to draw because you're here in this class as opposed to wherever else. So let's sit you down and say, here's this bottle and this ball and this cone. That's like literally the start. Okay, now let's understand, here's this bottle and this ball over here and this cone. And now let's like cast light on it and, like all of those things gradually, one by one. And it was like, that's where it starts to be like, okay, here's the students that are gonna be okay in this class, and here's the ones that ought to be in AP, like learning something else. They ought to be learning not just to straight up draw these things. They need to learn some ideas about space and three dimensionality and how to make a bigger picture out of it, but still understanding that it's just line. It's literally just like your understanding of line, space, I guess with shadows, time, all of the things, the chiaroscuro of life,
Now, so. when was it that you started seeing stuff? When was it that you were starting to be exposed to art outside of still lives?
So I think understanding that aspect of it, that particular thing, and being the first organized classes made me want to go do other stuff. Made me want to go do my own thing. Oh, I got these toys over here now. Let me stand Optimus Prime, lay He-Man across over there and throw some, and just let me do some other things. Of course, that was also, there was the model drawing, like actually having the students from the class, one of them, you got out of drawing because you went and sat among the still life. And so, or here he is sitting a skeleton in the middle of it, and let's figure out how to draw the skeleton. So he was pretty creative in stretching the mind from just those objects, but still understanding that these things and these people are literally taking up the same kind of space as those objects. They're not anything different but something three-dimensional in front of you. Mm-hmm. So from that moment, it didn't matter what, you're drawing this stuff in class, but then me personally, I'm going home and I'm like, yo, I'm finna draw whatever. I'm finna draw this doorway. I'm finna, all of these other things. So even the environments he created, and actually introducing us to painting within the 12th grade too. So it was like, okay, not only are you doing it with graphite and Conte and charcoal, now you're starting to understand color, and little by little. So he was.
Now it was mostly acrylic.
At the time, yeah.
Okay.
A couple of students understood, a little bit about oil, but it was acrylic because of safety measures.
Yeah.
It's still high school with a high school budget. So.
Now, for me, I remember like my high school art experience. It was like the art room itself. Like earlier you were kind of talking about being safe. Like for me, that was a place to be safe and a place to be free to be a weirdo and to make things, and then also to have other people around me who were also really crazy about making stuff. Yeah. What about for you? You were talking earlier about hanging out with those guys. What about for you in terms of the community? Was there a strong community presence in that room for you?
Not in that particular room. It was another classroom. Like our experience at Central was, I think the culture shock of Central comes when you first get there and you start to remember, or for me particularly, you start to not remember but realize, I mentioned Doubletree and John P. Freeman. So Doubletree, everybody in the building was black. Mm-hmm. I think my kindergarten and first grade teachers were white, and everyone else was black. Principals, staff, faculty, everybody. So at John P. Freeman, I believe in those 3 years I went there, there were 3 white students. John Schaefer was the only one who made it through all 3 years.
I like how you remember his name.
I know him now.
Yeah.
John Paul Schaefer. He does important things around town. But yeah, he that's probably why, because somehow he acclimated himself to be, I guess it's almost like a white boy Rick story. It's like, oh, here's white boy John. And he was always cool. They didn't take if we had to check, he He'd be checking right with us.
And so, how was that when you came to Central? Like,
Yeah, Central is like a melting pot of sorts. It's like it's the first time I really was like I'm around black people, I'm around white people, I'm around Jewish people. There's an entire floor that shows our ignorance. Most of these students were Vietnamese because of the area, but the area, as you know, younger students, is new to us. But we call that entire floor Chinatown, like just because like I said, our open ignorance. But none of those students were Chinese, not a single one of them. It is like, you got other ethnicities across the board, and Central was the first place where it was like, okay, I'm not just in a place where it's nothing but black students. So that part of it opened up in that way, but it's also like these students that are here, there's nothing unnatural. It's still is relatively integrated just because it has to be, and it's also segregated where people intend for it to be segregated. So then the flip side of that, the very next thing is you go to Jackson State, you're back to that particular situation, and it's like I'm at an HBCU. Then going to Memphis College of Art flips the switch in the other direction very drastically.
Now I'm curious about Jackson State. What was it that drew you there? Was there a connection? Did you have a friend or?
So my sister went to Jackson State, and like I said, she's 7 years older than me. So we moved her into the dorm the year she went to Jackson State. And when I was helping move her into the dorms, it was a space with nothing but beautiful black women. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go here. If I go to college, I'm going to go here. It really is that simple. That's why I chose it. I mean, of course, it was cool to go to my sister's legacy place, which she was pushing for anyway. But I was also like, man, yeah, I'd be very happy to know there are dorms and dorms full of black women that are this pretty.
Well, I mean, that's not an uncommon story. But that said, so like thinking about that, so what was it in particular that your sister talked about that she enjoyed about that experience? What was she majoring in?
Education.
Okay.
So of course, just daughter of teachers, and I think she did switch. I don't remember what it was, but I feel like she switched majors once, maybe. But no, I don't think she switched majors. I think she didn't declare a major and tried to take as many different classes as she could to keep the options open. And I think eventually she declared her major as education. So, yeah.
And was there encouragement from your family to go there because there was that legacy connection?
No. It was encouragement to go to school. I think if it had been in that way, I probably would have. My dad went to TSU for some time, and then he went to a couple of other colleges as a part of exchange programs. But and my mom went to Tougaloo, so I think more than anything, when you have two teachers, you're just going to school. Like you're,
right.
It's more so like you can try to do something else if you want to, but understand our feelings about education itself and understand that. Like I said, I had a scholarship to go to University of Memphis as well. I had the grades to do the same thing at TSU. And of course, when you're at a place like Central, they also are organized enough to, the guidance counselors were making sure I was definitely getting letter after letter after letter of places I could have gone. And it was just like, okay, well, send us this application and these $40 and that. And so at that point when I started realizing it's 50, 60 letters here, I can make a decision. And, the only other one that was in the realm of what I might have wanted to go to was SCAD. But, being a person from Memphis, I didn't know that much about Atlanta. Now we're talking about, at this time, we're talking about pre-Olympics, burgeoning Freaknik Atlanta. So that's that cultural space. And even within that little span of 7 years, that changed completely. But it probably would have been interesting to go to SCAD. To say the least, I would have met Carol Walker, which would have been, I guess that would have changed a lot of things. But while I was at Jackson State, I had a couple of professors in particular who, Dr. Leela Swanson would always put like brochures and whatnot from other places like Skowhegan, like Provincetown, like these places that you as a student would need to know. And so freshman to sophomore year, I was picking up brochures, and I remember one in particular, in that time range. Speaking of Carol Walker, she was a resident artist at Skowhegan at one of those times, along with Carrie Mae Weems in the same, capsule. And I was just like, I saw it and was like, shit, this is a place I need to go. Of course, it was, 5-6 years later, but I applied like 3 or 4 times and was rejected, and then that 4th time it was just like, oh, okay. Things came together in that way.
Now, tell me more about Jackson.
Jackson, Mississippi?
Well, the school itself.
So the school, it was definitely an HBCU, a classic and traditional HBCU in the sense of, the choice to go there was still like, I'm relatively familiar because I have family in Jackson. I have enough family in Jackson. It's 3 hours away, and of course, as a young person, you're like, man, I need to be able to come home and do some laundry and eat some food. But so it's not far. It's not too far, but it's far enough to, be a couple of towns over. The experience with the school was probably relatively traditional because I joined a fraternity fall '97, and that changes the school experience in a really crazy way. I probably spent the fall road tripping more than in class, so on less than no money. So it's a crazy thing. I put my grades in jeopardy in a way that was weird, academic probation, but I had teachers who were like, okay, he's gonna come to class. I literally spent, to rectify everything and graduate within 4 years, I took 24 hours in my senior year, like the last semester. And I told those teachers that I had been cool with 3.5 years, I was like, look, I'm gonna do all the work. I'm not coming to any classes. And they were like, whatever, all right, it's cool, because we know you're gonna do all the work, plus you're gonna be in the studio, like glued to the studio like you always are. So
But now, so you get there as a freshman, and then, you were talking about before when you were at Central, you were sort of class clown. You were doing the work, you were doing the things.
Always.
Now, what about like when you got there to college? What was and you made reference to a professor there who was making sure that you knew about things. Talk to me a little bit about some of the faculty there and what was happening in terms of your early exposure, in terms of early part of college.
So a few that I can speak to very directly. John Jennings is the only professor to this day that I would say inspires me right this minute. He literally just wrote a version of Silver Surfer for Marvel, really for Marvel. That was Ghost something. It's not Ghost Rider. But he put together I think it's a 6-part series. He worked with what's the guy's name? Jordan Peele for a few projects. He is the teacher that inspires me, because even back then it was if I'm going to the studio, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I'm finna go to the studio. If anybody's there, he's there working on his computer, doing graphic design work, writing comics. Now he's a person that's into comics in a way that I can't believe. So John Jennings was the professor that he was one of those professors that understood, like, okay, you're not coming to class. I'm not worried about it because, hell, I'm gonna see you like in the studio whenever. Um, so yeah, he is like probably the sole teacher that's to this day touring, working his ass off, lecturing. Um, I think he's teaching he might be California now, but he's always had like really major college teaching jobs while doing his own thing, as a graphic designer, as a illustrationist, as all of the things. Um, so that's one. Uh, Dr. Leland Swanson, like I said, she was the one I probably had like the same relationship with her as I had with Bill Hicks. Um, but at a certain point, I understood that she was like, I see through this class clown bullshit. Just do the work. Don't. Um,
What was she teaching?
art history.
Oh, okay.
And so, like I said, she was the one who would like run across the stuff, the mailings, the Mississippi Museum of Art, you know, all of the different things that she just knew. Like, I'm gonna set this here, and somebody who's honest and interested, you know, with the process is gonna see them, is gonna find them. Um, so,
No, what class was she teaching?
art history.
Oh, okay.
Like every level of art history. She was pretty much the chief art historian in that space.
And then was this sort of...
It was three.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think. Lynette Stevenson. Her process was kind of the same. Like she always knew. She saw me working on things. She was kind of a continuation in like more so. Yes, the still life, but she was more interested in the form. So she was the introduction to a lot more model drawing, animated, all of this. What is it? Just the 3D nature of the physical form. But she was always a teacher that had her eyes on like the things happening in New York, of course, in the art scene. And now she's teaching, I believe, at Colgate. She's probably been teaching there over a decade or so. But she was at Jackson State understanding that there were other spaces that were better spaces that she needed to go get into. So that was the aspect of her that made me understand you don't have to be static in a place. You don't necessarily always owe it to a place to stay there just because. And so those were the three aspects of those particular teachers that I remember the most.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about classmates or cohorts? Was there? I mean, you were talking earlier about Bill Hicks's class. Were there people
Mm-hmm.
there? What was the art community like there at the school? Was it a place where you were kind of surrounded by other people who were really into it, or were you kind of alone?
So that was the outsider nature of it. Like I said, Bill Hicks had his favorites. So those kids ended up like at his house doing sketch work and in other places, you know, and with the access to other opportunities, it comes back to access and who decides what you're going to get and what you're not. I was never on the inside of Bill Hicks's favorites.
Right.
So,
But you were talking about that cluster of people. What about at college? Were there other people who were at college with you who were super serious too, or was it kind of like you were by yourself over there?
one of the biggest problems, I had a lot of people who were very interested in the same things, but one of the biggest problems, like I said, there were no art scholarships. There were honors college scholarships, and a lot of people didn't necessarily have the grades for those scholarships. So they had to spend a lot more time, with a part-time job or with work study. Like I said, like my parents knew that if you deal with education in a certain way, you'll get the finances to, do it. So that's why I was kind of able to be financially free from school, because the only thing I had to pay for the whole time was the out-of-state fees. and that was only because I had relatives there, and my parents were like, "Well, are you gonna actually be there with them, or like my granddad was there the whole time? If you're gonna go there and you're gonna use that address, are you going to, actually be there, or are you just gonna be using him for his address?" And it was like, I'd visited quite a bit, but it was never like the type of thing where it was like, okay, you should be justified in taking this money because my parents are like incredibly straight line like that. So yeah, I still was able to leave Jackson State with just the debt that was the out of state fees, and I paid that straight through. So because you couldn't not, they wouldn't let you have out of state fees and stay on campus. So
Right.
it was just like having an apartment over the time that I was at Jackson State. So,
Now, just out of curiosity, what were some of the things that you were being exposed to in terms of art from the outside world? Like you mentioned, Kara Walker. What were some other things that you remember seeing or being exposed to when you were in college?
I remember being I remember being a Basquiat fan because of the movie that Schnabel put together with Jeffrey Wright. So that's why also to this day Jeffrey Wright is my favorite actor. But having had some exposure, and that was another part of Lynette Stevenson. She was the one who would be like, "You should look at this artist. You're making these things. You're being creative in this like abstracty way. You should look at this artist." And one of them was Basquiat. So that film, I guess, came out with 95 or 96, one of those two. And so watching that film, it was the type of thing that made you think, "Oh man, I got like this big space. I can, make big ass canvases. I can make something that's 4x4, 6x6." Um, and, you find the biggest roll of fabric of canvas at Hancock, and you're like, okay, let's go. Um, and it's funny because then one day you visit the St. Louis Art Museum and you see Richters that are like 20 feet tall, and you're like, holy shit. But so those parallels, there were teachers who were, and Dr. Swanson as well, they were like, well, you should look at this artist, you should check, she was more so like, you should check out Rauschenberg. And Lynette Stevenson was well, here's Basquiat, and here's also, just because Romare Bearden and Jacob Lawrence, you like some collage-y type things, so look at them too. But here's, I think Basquiat was probably that turning point throughout that time where I was like, this is somebody whose work seems important in a way. And of course, if you really pay attention to that, then it expands into, all of a sudden you're looking at what was New York New Wave, what is the Whitney Biennial, what is all of this other stuff, and then it just kind of, it becomes that same multiverse. It branches off, and you start to be like, oh well, while I'm looking at them, here's Carrie Mae Weems, and gosh, she looks a lot like Lorna Simpson. And what's the relationship there? Oh, they're very friendly and competitive in that they are disappointed if they see the other one has made an image that they feel like they should have made. Like it's that type of, yeah, no, I've heard Carrie Mae Weems say it out loud. So I know there's the type of, it's very friendly fire that's, that drives the competition and makes them want to make better work. So you look at that relationship, and it's Glenn Ligon. And so, of course, also going back to the fact that, understanding how to apply for things around that same time. I think one of the first things Thelma Golden did at the Studio Museum was put together an exhibition that was an open call, that people on the museum level, quote unquote, couldn't fathom, and this is off of her energy from the Whitney Biennial that she did, and the Black Male Show. So all of these things start to stack up on each other, and you realize, okay, this is the probably the art world that I figure I might fit into the closest. And yeah, so
Now, when you were looking at that stuff, or when you were hearing about that, it was through the classroom experience, or was it through
in a way,
the
but
library?
then I also like I got out and did my own thing. Like just like if I'm in the classes at Central doing this still life, then I go home and I'm doing other things. I allowed all of those things to spill in an unfiltered fashion to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go look at these things, and that's how you get from Basquiat to a Carol Walker to understanding like how all of them, have different conversations. And now I think that list would be like, I'd look at Ellen Gallagher in the same way I would try to figure out what happened to Nick Hess, I'd say Carol Walker and Nick Hess, and then it's like both of them working on these wall things. Both of them have very similar energies. So yeah, I allow those things to spiral and have like the whole time.
No, you were saying earlier, you mentioned Bearden and Lawrence in terms of thinking about the collage. At that time, in college, were you working with a lot of collage?
So my first time probably actualizing collage was, well, at the end of college. I think I moved away from painting so much and started thinking mixed media was a more important angle. It opened up the idea of painting way more.
Now, just out of curiosity, so my kiddo, my youngest, they really work on a lot of collage, and that was something that was totally not on my radar for years and years and years for some reason, and I'm not totally sure why. But just out of curiosity, what was it that that made it click in your brain?
So, and I actually this will kind of line up. So before high school and before those classes, it was completely drawing, and being in Bill Hicks' class introduced me to painting. At Jackson State, they didn't have a photography lab, but they had journalism classes. So while they didn't have fine art photography, I learned from Rogelio Solis, who's an AP sports photographer.
Okay.
I learned photojournalism, and it was like, he understood that I had an eye for composition, and the one thing that had to be added to that was just understanding, always being prepared, having your camera when the situation was necessary, and being able to shoot on the fly. Because we were shooting, gonna age myself again, we were shooting 35 millimeter black and white Ilford, the nice green tops, and then going in and learning the process of the chemicals and all of those things. So it was like, okay, you got these 36 shots on this roll. And, lucky for me, I was like the type of student who was like, I don't care about getting another pair of Jordans or Pennies or Barclays at the time. I need some more Ilford. I need some Ilford paper. I need these chemicals so I don't have to share and take the chance that somebody ruined my fucking Ilford. So it was like.
So now, just out of curiosity, what kind of images were you taking?
Just in general, like you say, if it's photojournalism, the image presents itself, and you got to be ready to shoot it, like no matter where it is or what it is. So one of my favorite things to do was go to football games and look at the crowds. So some of the images I have from that time at Jackson State were like, one of my favorite ones that I still had those negatives. There was this moment where I was walking into, I can't think of the name of the stadium, but Jackson State University's football stadium. I was walking into it. They had like these double and triple gates, and they had this one white security guard who just looked like the policiest police motherfucker that you ever seen. And so my friends are walking in, and I'm far back, and as they're in line, he's like watching over them, like with his hands in like that position, and like just incredibly unfriendly. And so the interactions of each person, looking at them, him looking away, all of these things, it was about, that was the moment. It was only like 10 minutes in line, going through line, but it's like each one of these interactions is like this little microcosm of aggression, unspoken. And half of them weren't aggressive at all, but the visual nature of it was framed, and it felt like black people going in line into this gated area with aggressively angry, passively angry white policemen. So those were the type of things that I was shooting at the time.
I like this thing where you're talking about coming at it from a photojournalist point of view. I mean, to me, that seems really interesting in that there's a kind of like you're not necessarily going out looking for it, but you're putting yourself in the place, and then you're also sort of keenly aware of the need to have the camera.
Right.
And then it also seems like there's a need for you to, like you were saying, you've got these 36 pictures. You know, there's also a kind of urgency that comes with having a roll of film as opposed to the digital land. It is.
Oh my! And that's we can get to that part of it, because we're talking about collage. So first and foremost, to make the collage, you have to have these images. And photojournalism, while it's not pressure, it is pressure, because that moment really is just like right there. If you don't catch it, all you can do is imagine what it would have been. So I go to, and here's the day and night. I go from Jackson State University with, now all of a sudden it's drawing, it's painting, and it's photography. I go to Jackson State I go to Memphis College of Art, and it's like going from a place that struggled to have a few of those big fat turquoise Macs and the old Apple computers, and all of a sudden you're in a place that has more computers in one room than you ever saw in your undergrad. So that's going from a historically black college to a private white institution. And all of a sudden I'm in a place where it's like 40 students in the class, and every single one of them has its own Mac that has all the capabilities, including Photoshop. Introduce Photoshop, and all of a sudden every one of those 36 frames I can scan in, I can manipulate 100 different ways, and I can do whatever if I want. And it's at this time it's on a 700 megabit CD, so I'm piecing together collages that are freaking like this size. And you know, it's fun. But then I went to Skowhegan, and somewhere in that process I started to realize, over the course of early on in those weeks, the serenity of it made me realize I really just like to draw. So as well as I got some advice before that moment with Alonzo Davis, and he was like one of my studio visits. He knew there were elements of what I was doing that I needed to break down. He was like, you make these images, and a lot of times you act like they're way too precious. And sometimes you might want to, tear something up and see what could happen. And so between getting that advice, going to Skowhegan, and understanding, I can come back to drawing as the simple act itself, but it's like now all of a sudden drawing is exactly the line. So it's cutting, it's making tape drawings on an entire wall. And of course, if at the time you're looking at Carol Walker and that's like the most important conversation happening, what can I do that is the opposite of her? Well, that's when I started making like literal line drawings that were not silhouettes, that were not solid, that were intense, that were still about cutting that tape, making those lines, pulling images together, and all of the concepts. And you could, at the time, we were also dating it because it's before 9/11, you could hop on a plane with, X-Acto knives and roller tape, a couple of pieces of plexiglass, and all of a sudden I can make a wall piece that's 40 feet long with just that roller tape and just those creative elements. So Skowhegan opened up the idea that all of the things that you've been learning are just there and available for you to apply and to make into, what you got the freedom. You've just been introduced to 64 other people who are brilliant in all these other different ways creatively. And, people like Elliot Hundley, like all of a sudden it's like he's making these things that are not stable at all. He's pinning collage pieces, and so that he's probably, I think, a relatively decent inspiration within that process. So seeing these different ways of making, collecting, compiling, and understanding, and just seeing these different processes from people who are in totally different parts of the world. Of course, half of them so connected they were just from New York or Yale or this and that, but the other half is from everywhere else. So now you're understanding, you can open up your practices and processes a lot differently when being around a much more diverse group of people than you had in Memphis or in Jackson. So,
okay, so just to back up just a little bit. Okay, so what kind of things were you? Part of me wants to break all these people down and sort of say, okay, Lester, what is it that you dig about Basquiat, and then what is it you dig about these other
problem.
things? But like, I'm super curious because Basquiat sort of got on my radar when we went down to Montgomery to see the retrospective, and I think that might have been in '95 or '96.
Interesting. Is it the one that was from the Whitney?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so seeing
nice.
those,
I wish I had known that.
that was bonkers. But just out of curiosity, like you mentioned the size, of course. What else was it that attracted you to Basquiat? P.S. I'm also in the fan club, and so I'm just curious to hear how you think about it.
So I can reference that from understanding my favorite painting. Of course, Basquiat is like first and foremost. You see the movie, and then dig into him in like all of the other ways. So the dynamics of his career, and the way that he was handled as an artist in his profession, that those things. It's a cautionary tale that gives you pause, but you also, in a lot of ways, people feel like this is the quote unquote pinnacle of what a black artist's success is, and to think that that's the case, but here he is with his life, truncated at 27 years old. So over time, I lost the fascination with Basquiat in that way. But my favorite painting of his is Pegasus, and to know Pegasus, every inch of it is covered with text. It's visually, I think it's the most striking and beautiful painting he has because there's so much feeling of it being a very complete and abstract painting, even though you can literally sit there and read every single word that's on it. But then the fact that he was about to like destroy this painting just by painting over the whole thing black tells me like and somebody had to stop him before he did it. It's crazy, but it's like understanding those elements about that painting, the energy around it, and the idea that this, in his mind, it was like, I don't necessarily want this. He felt a freedom of being like, well, if this ain't it, then this ain't it. Even to like right now, I'm working on several pieces in my studio that are like 7-8 years old, and I'm just contemplating like, what would happen if I did this entire process over those paintings? And so the idea that you can have the freedom to take that risk and take that chance that, if this isn't it, then so be it. That's always been a thing about his work that stuck with me. That painting in particular is the one I can single out that sums up all of those feelings about what I like the most about his studio practice. And it's one of the things, like I said, it's a cautionary tale that, it helps to be in control of these processes and step back and see something when it's as beautiful as it should be and stop. So.
Now, who were some other people that you were looking at or thinking about when you were an undergrad?
Of course, like I said, it's also the understanding of the business itself and looking at somebody.
I love how you said, "Of course, it's about the business." I had no idea what you were talking about until I graduated from grad school. Well, but tell me more about this undergrad experience and thinking about business.
I mean, so you see somebody like Carol Walker at the same exact time, and you're thinking, man, she is this age, and these things are happening, and so I need to learn, how the weirdest thing about the MacArthur that I see a lot of times, half the time I've seen people who've gotten it that are very much within the same universe of working that I'm in, and then sometimes I see somebody that gets that, or like I look at the Driscoll Prize like that, and I'm like, damn, I'm never gonna get that shit. But I'm also like, it's encouraging because I'm like, oh yeah, this person is like 10 years older than me, and a lot happened in those 10 years. So those, I look at, the idea of business itself. I'm reflective about the way that things are in Memphis, where artists, by and large, don't get a lot of real gallery support. It's a small handful, and most of those people are concentrated in one place. But understanding that business exists outside of Memphis, and it's helpful to be aware of where else things are happening and how they can happen,
And this was something that you were looking at, thinking about in undergrad. And so how much time did you have in between undergrad and grad? Did you just go straight through?
I went straight through. So,
okay.
And that wasn't my intention either. Just like with undergrad, I think in between each one, I was just under the impression that I don't know exactly what it is I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to keep being an artist. I'm going to keep making work. So in between, I went from Jackson State, and that summer I got a chance to go to the Tougaloo Colony, and Alonzo Davis happened to be at the Tougaloo Colony at the time, and he was just like, "What are your plans for when you leave here?" And I told him that I just finished undergrad, and I'm just gonna go and probably try to keep making work that's like the work I'm making now, and figure out what I can do differently here and there. And yeah, I was in undergrad. I was already like applying for this project space or that university or the super old zeitgeist. I think like I gotta show, like I was doing stuff like that. So applying for stuff just was what I was doing the whole time. And Alonzo was like, you should come to MCA. He's like, you already going back to Memphis, like you should go to MCA. And sure enough, when I got there, he had set things in motion where I could just step into it and have a decent studio space. But he liked what I was doing while I was there at the Tougaloo Colony. I was making some little collages that were probably about 11 by 17. And
now tell me about the Tougaloo Colony. How did that get on your radar? And then
the
what
same
was
as
it?
everything else. It's a residency type thing that's, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I think. But it's on the campus of Tougaloo College, and it's just kind of an invitational program where I think Frank D was there at the same time. I think there was a teacher, what's his name, from Ole Miss, who involved himself quite a bit, Jerry Allen. So yeah, just people in the region that were just interested in coming together around the collection that they had, having conversations. So they were also, because of the the connections that they would put together, people like Richard Mayhew, painter. He came through. So it was a decent program to. One of the funniest ones, one of the biggest names, Turquoise Dyson, was a student there at the time, right? So, and I never realized that until like far afterwards. It was like, oh shit, that was Turquoise Dyson, like super big time superstar Turquoise Dyson.
No, what was the setup there? Like you were saying, it was like sort of a 2-week residency program. Was it one
So
of those things?
They had the dorms,
okay,
and they had the art school. So they just opened those facilities and had, I think, about maybe 30 residents at a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, people paid, to be there, and it was, we just took art classes, few minor, like a lecture and, a keynote speaker or whatever, and, a couple of workshops. I think over to, I want to say Maritza might have done a printmaking workshop, but teachers from around the, area would come in and teach. Like I said, Jerry Allen was a painting teacher. So it was just a simple residency.
It's interesting. One of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times is that kind of not a determination, but just kind of like a knowing that this is what you're going to be doing, Yeah. And I don't know about you, but when I told my folks that I was going to be an art major, they kind of lost their minds. Were your parents always like, yeah, well, of course, you're going to school and you're going to make art?
Absolutely not. They were like, you're going to school.
I love how you were almost inaudible. Like if we had subtitles, we would have to put it in there. And so you said, absolutely not.
Well, no, they didn't, because it's not a thing that, if you're into the art community and you start to understand there's a separation even now between people who make art and people who are artists. Mm-hmm. Like there are tons of people who make art. There are people who type in AI commands and think they make art. But it's I think my dad, in his idea of support, he thought I was going to be an architect. Mm. And so, of course, he's always, he is literally Tim the Tool Guy for real. And so his understanding of the writing part is, the arts part is like, okay, you're able to draw, so architecture is an option for you. Mm-hmm. It was only... Man, it was when I got my first urban art commission project, which was the Whitehaven Library, and I was able to show him a check for $25,000. And he was like, "Oh, okay, you might be okay."
And that was much later.
And that's how long it takes for them to like. They see all the things that you do along the way, and they're happy for you, but it's still like, at any given time, you have a degree, you can go teach. And, a part of my supplemental in between was for, a couple of years I was a substitute teacher. And that's been the other part that I don't really talk about that much. I've always, in between whatever was happening, have taken some kind of art job to fund my studio habit. Mm-hmm. And I knew the first job I took was FedEx between my freshman and sophomore year. I went to FedEx for that summer, and when a huge spool of some stuff came rolling off the line, some airplane parts came rolling off the line, and I dodged them, and I was like, you know what, I quit today. And they were like, oh, well, you got to give us 2 weeks notice. I was like, I'm compressing that. and I won't be back tomorrow because I'm going back to, it was always like this was extra money because when you start out at FedEx, they give you, after like a month or so, they start giving you these bonus checks that are just like, oh, here's $200 more. And it's fascinating. That's how they rope people in, because you're like thinking to yourself still like, how much money are they making hand over fist when they can hand like an 18-year-old just extra $200 just to, that's how, FedEx shows you at the very, like before you ever set foot into the hub, they show you videos of people getting killed in the hub. So they make sure you understand this is a very dangerous job. And it was one of those nights where it was just like, yeah, that happened and I won't be back tomorrow. And even my supervisor was like, you're really brilliant. You could like be here and you could probably be in my spot like within a couple of months. And I was like, yeah, no, in a couple of months I'm going back to school for my sophomore year. And I was doing this for the summer anyway. Y'all just cut it short. I got more time to not do this. So
and we got maybe like 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Tell me a little bit more. I'm curious about the Tougaloo colony. Tell me a little bit more, because I feel like that was a place where you were maybe for the first time exposed to people from a wide variety of places. Just out of curiosity, what do you think that space did aside from this conversation with Alonzo that helped you think about coming to Memphis?
I mean, it was already home. Memphis is home, so it's not like that wasn't foreign. I would say Skowhegan is like a bigger experience as far as meeting people, other people. Tougaloo was still very much like some mix between the Jackson State experience and with like a sprinkle of Memphis College of Art, because it was still like mostly it's on a HBCU campus, so it was still a relatively black experience. When we're talking about Skowhegan, that's the type of thing that expands, all of your notions as compared to where you were. That's more so like the eye opener, because it's interesting when I came back to. That's a story in and of itself. I went to Skowhegan after. Like I said, that was like 3 or 4 times trying to apply for it. The 4th time was the charm, because while I was at Memphis College of Art, I decided my work study would be to take artists, to pick them up from the airport for all visiting artists, all that group of people. So I was like first contact. I would find out what, whether they were vegan, all of the things, which is hard as hell in Memphis in, right before 2000. So it's like this would be their first introduction to Memphis. And one of them, I treated everybody the same. Like this is your hospitality. You are welcome to Memphis. Like what's good? What do you want to do? How do you feel? Do you want to go straight to the hotel? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to get something to eat? All of those things. One of them in particular was Melissa Meyer, painter out of New York, and I didn't know anything about her. But I knew she wanted to go to Graceland. She had to go to Graceland, so that's my only time ever going to Graceland. God bless the place. It's a house, but so I didn't know she was on the board of governors at Skowhegan, but she came back to New York and was like, "Yo, y'all got to get this kid to, Skowhegan. I don't care what it takes, y'all. He needs to be there." And so that, that just knowing that I was gonna treat any of the artists coming in well anyway. It wasn't about like this is the thing. So now she's immersed me into this fascinating group of people that included like as students, Caleb Lindsay, Derek Adams, Anna Sulerikis, Elliot Hundley. It was just like that group with Fred Wilson, Robert Storr, Whitfield Lavelle, Melissa Meyer. It's just like, here's your combination of people that's going to change your perspective. So when I came back to MCA, it was kind of hard that last semester because it was like I just learned more in 9 weeks about what it is to be in this space than I've learned it this whole time at MCA.
Now, just out of curiosity, what kind of things? I mean, that's a long time. I mean, obviously the colony where you were before was like 2 weeks, but man, Skowhegan, everything I've ever heard from the people who go, they're like, oh, you know what? After the second week, they realize this is a really long thing, and they've got a lot of time to make stuff. And so, just out of curiosity, what do you feel like were some things that were important for you in that process?
Like I said, the first and foremost thing was I understood how much I really liked to draw and how it came back to just the line itself for me. Also learning through the process that people were in different places in time with their careers. They were at very different spots. They keep a relative core age that's pretty much in the center, but it's a lot of people that are younger. It's a lot of people that were older. Now, at the time, I was pretty young because this was within the compact of going straight through school, which I knew if I stopped, I probably wouldn't have gone back to grad school. But it's in that same compressed time. So I'm 23, 24 at Skowhegan with people who are 30 at this point in their career. It's people that are older than that are at that point of their career. And it's like, as much as that was happening, you also started to understand the dynamics of like how, okay, you're one of the best and brightest from this part of the country. It doesn't really matter because this kid went to Yale and they're, they're people who suggested them to come here were Marilyn Minter and Liz Larner. So, you start to understand the way things get connected and get hooked up in the different dynamics. And so it either forces you into being like, I'm finna play that game and I'm finna be in New York every weekend and eventually I'm gonna get invited to the Met Gala and all of this and you're gonna be in that group. But are you still gonna be just a person making work in your studio too? Like, are you gonna have a studio process in place that is gonna allow you to still be the physical, creative person that you are? So I think I can say one of the people at Memphis College of Art who gave me great advice was Matthew Daylor. He always was like, if you don't have a studio, how are you an artist? Like he was like, he left school, he had no plan except for I'm gonna get a studio. And that, it's certain things you learn from different people. You, in the same collage fashion, you cobble those pieces of information together to realize after Skowhegan, I was like, I was able to move from, the Atlanta Biennial to Frequency at the Studio Museum to the Black Alphabet in Warsaw, Poland. But all in all, if I'm in Memphis, I can get a cost-effective large space that would probably cost me about 7 or 8 times as much in a major city. So that was the type of thing that made sense to have the best possible studio space to be productive in within your own way of making art. So
That's a good spot.
cool.
Yeah, we can pause there.
Awesome.
Press. And that was the first of 2 interviews recorded with Lester Julian Merriweather. This one was recorded on March 16th, 2024. Please join us next week when we will have the second of the 2 interviews with Lester Julian Merriweather. Until then, thank you for listening.